U.S. President Donald Trump is sending a new blunt message to Iran's remaining leaders. It is too late to talk. Trump signaling that the U.S. and Israeli onslaught won't end anytime soon. Let's look at Tehran this morning. Israel again taking part in the attacks on that city and across Iran. The Israeli military is claiming that another senior Iranian commander has been targeted, but the social media post doesn't name them. We do know that airstrikes have killed many of Iran's top government and military leaders. Trump is warning the regime that a big wave of attacks is still to come.
Whatever the time is, it's okay, whatever it takes. They said, oh, well, if the president wants to do it really quickly, after that he'll get bored. I don't get bored. There's nothing boring about this.
The hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. The next phase will be even more punishing on Iran than it is right now.
I said it could be quick and decisive. It may take some time, but it's not going to take years. It's not an endless war.
Trump says the U.S. military has the missiles and bombs to keep up the onslaught, adding in a social media post that more high-end weaponry is stockpiled in what he calls outlying countries. As of this morning, Israel escalating its attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israel's military says a new airstrike into Beirut targeted remaining Hezbollah commanders. The Iranian proxy force lost much of its leadership in the fighting with Israel that ended more than a year ago. Israeli troops are also making a new push into southern Lebanon. The Israeli defense minister says the incursion is aimed at stopping rocket attacks on Israel by seizing ground to push back Hezbollah. More than 80 communities in southern Lebanon are under evacuation orders from the Israeli military. And the UN Refugee Agency says at least 30,000 people have already fled their homes. Iran's foreign ministry is leveling criticism at the U.S. this morning over the killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
He was living in his home. You have to ask this question from the aggressors who dared to attack Iran and attack his compound.
The spokesperson went on to ask whether Iran's school children were a threat to the U.S., referencing the bombing of an Iranian primary school that killed dozens of girls and school staff. The UN is now calling for an investigation into that attack. We aren't able to get a reporter into Iran, which is why Briar Stewart is covering this now from Van, Turkey. Briar, take us through what's happening.
Yeah, so the UN Office for the High Commissioner for Human Rights is calling for a thorough and impartial investigation into this strike on the school. And this is a strike that happened on Saturday, so in the early hours of the operation launched by the U.S. and Israel. And it hit a primary school in the city of Minab. It is in southern Iran. It is close to the strategically important Strait of Hormuz, where we know is a critical shipping area, and a number of ships are stranded there right now. And because it's so difficult to verify the information on the ground in Iran, not only because reporters are heavily restricted from going in there, but also there's a widespread internet outage. The UN today has really called for an investigation to clarify just exactly what happened and how it could have ended up like this. Take a listen.
The High Commissioner calls for a prompt, impartial and thorough investigation into the circumstances of the attack. The onus is on the forces that carried out the attack to investigate it. We call on them to make public the findings and to ensure accountability and redress for the victims. If attacks are found to be directed against civilians or civilian objects or indiscriminate attacks, they are serious violations of international humanitarian law and may amount to war crimes. On this specific incident, we don't have enough information to make a factual determination of what happened.
Now, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that they would never deliberately target a school, but little else on the matter. And I can tell you that Iran's state broadcasters have been airing footage all throughout the day of a very large funeral procession in the city to honor the victims. As I said, it's footage that the broadcasters are putting out, but you see small coffins being passed over the crowd. And what the state broadcaster is reporting is that 160 students were killed in the strike.
Breyer, you have been reporting from that border crossing at the crossing at Iran and Turkey, where those two countries meet. What have you been hearing from people fleeing Iran?
Yeah, I've been reporting from the Kapakoi border crossing, which is one of 3 land border crossings between Turkey and Iran. And we did just get in some new numbers from Turkish officials who said that yesterday more than 2,000 people crossed in and out over the border at that specific point. That was higher than the day yesterday. And today we understand from contacts on the border that there's even an increased flow of pedestrians. And so these are people crossing over the land border because, of course, you can't fly in and out of Iran right now. I will say, being at the border and speaking with Iranians there, as well as Iranians in this city, in Van, have told us a lot of cases that they're not comfortable speaking publicly, having their name or image out there. But some people do want to talk. They want to talk about the situation on the ground in Iran, particularly in the capital, Tehran. Reuters spoke to a couple of people coming out at the border crossing earlier today. They had connections to Canada. Here's some of those interviews.
There is a certain stress in the air, when this kind of stuff happens. Like, obviously people are a little bit scared and they are upset, especially considering that, the bombs are never particularly just for military sites. Like, they bombed a hospital, Ghazi Hospital in Tehran, or there was a school in the south of Iran that they bombed. So these kinds of news tend to scare people a lot more.
And I can tell you from people that we have been speaking with, they've talked about how the capital is on high alert. A lot of shops are closed. People are sticking close to home. And in terms of the border itself, the Canadian Embassy here has sent a small team to this area to monitor the border. They say there's no issues right now in terms of Canadians having problems coming out of Iran, but they have a team here on the ground in case the situation further develops.
Also developing this morning, Breyer, the fact that there are mass evacuations underway in Lebanon. We know that Israeli ground forces pushing into southern Lebanon as we speak. So what more can you tell us about what's unfolding there right now?
Yeah, this is a significant escalation, and this just really restarts a conflict that had been put on pause with the ceasefire that was negotiated back in the fall of 2024. What Israel says it's targeting Hezbollah sites, so command centers, weapons storage facilities, and they've ordered the evacuation of more than 80 villages and towns in southern Lebanon. Israeli troops are pushing in. Israel says it's seizing strategic high ground in order to protect Israeli communities near the border. At the same time, Israel is also striking the southern suburbs of Beirut, areas where Hezbollah has had a presence. And so this is, a significant escalation and expansion of the conflict. And as has been mentioned, UN officials say around 30,000 residents have been displaced because of this part of the war. And obviously, as these strikes continues, the death toll does rise as well.